Welcome to On the Edge, brought to you by Elite Sales Edge with your host, Stephen Brown. In the series, Getting to Know Your CXOs, we'll be diving deep into conversations with various C-level executives. We'll explore the formidable challenges they encounter, the critical decisions they make, and the lessons that have left a lasting impact on them. Sit back and prepare to gain some insightful knowledge from the leaders who shape the business world.
Welcome to On the Edge. I'm your host, Stephen Brown, and this is another episode of Getting to Know Your CXOs. Today, our guest is Wendy Caceres. Wendy is a 30-year marketing executive specializing in B2B enterprise software and cloud-native applications. She has held CMO jobs at leading IoT companies such as Echelon, Isla Networks, K, and Inseego. She was also the former worldwide head of enterprise marketing at Amazon Web Services. Wendy's experience spans both the public and privately held companies, managing teams across corporate marketing, product marketing, growth marketing, and channels. Wendy, we're so glad to have you to the show. Welcome to On the Edge.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I'm excited to be here and be able to join you this afternoon.
Awesome. Wendy, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I gave them the formals. Why don't you give them the informals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate being here. Really anxious for our discussion. Like you said, I've had a pretty tenured career in marketing spans over 30 years. So I've been doing this for a very long time. Um, and the majority of that has been out in Valley. So I'm out in the Bay Area. Been here about 28 years. And most of that time I've played CMO roles for, as you mentioned, high-tech companies. But about 3 years ago, I actually left corporate America and I've been playing fractional CMO roles. And I do this for PE-backed firms that typically have companies in their portfolio that are in two different stages. So the first stage is a company that may be in a turnaround situation. So they need somebody who's pretty experienced who can come in and quickly assess the team, identify gaps, put in processes and procedures to help turn that around. Um, and the second is, I would say, just the exact opposite. It's really, a PE company has a high growth company in their portfolio, and they need an experienced leader who can come in and really help them scale and capture that market opportunity. So that's when I come in and we very quickly assess the team. We put in place new Martech stacks. We hire. We build marketing strategies that are international that help them expand. And so that's what I've been doing for about the past 3 years, and it's really been it's been an exciting time.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about being a CMO. So, if you were to give advice to an up and coming person that was taking on their first role as a CMO, what would you advise that person to do in the first 30 to 60, 90 days to make sure they get off on the right foot?
Yeah, good question. So I think the first thing I would say, Stephen, is I wouldn't necessarily do anything in the first 30 days. And by that, I mean make any major changes. I think the most important thing that an incoming C-level executive can do is to listen and to observe and understand really what's taking place and why those things have been taking place in the way that they are. So I wouldn't recommend implementing any changes in the first 30 days, unless, of course, you're in a turnaround position where time is of the essence.
Right.
So what I typically do when I come on board is assess the talent of the team. I believe very strongly that there are distinct disciplines within marketing. So just like engineering, where you have software engineers and hardware engineers, those skill sets don't necessarily translate. It's the same is true in the marketing world. So you may have somebody who specializes in growth marketing. That's not going to be your person who should be, first and foremost running your PR strategy. So I'll take a look at what the team, what's in place, identify where there's strengths, maybe where there's overlaps or where there's gaps. And then I would implement the right team structure so that it's everybody has a role to play. They can play their role and we can act as kind of one holistic team. Um,
Awesome.
the next thing that I would do is look at what the marketing strategies and plans that are in place. And I'm come from a very data centric world. I use data
Mm.
as much as I possibly can. So I start to look at what's the impact of those marketing strategies and plans, what's the ROI on those, which ones are performing well, which ones aren't, and then we begin to build around that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And one constant theme that has jumped out across all the senior executives that I've talked to, such as like yourself, is listening. And, kind of coming in, I'm the new sheriff in town, kicking the doors in. That's really that's really not a recipe for success. And with to a person, they've been like, you learn a lot in that first, 30 days, particularly if you can get people to open up.
Yeah.
If you're within the organization and you're promoted into the role, that has a different set of challenges that come with it. Also, some opportunities. And if you're brand new to the opportunity, it's a whole different dynamic. So I think your advice is wise. I mean, to listen, learn, and then implement. I think people in the company would respond a heck of a lot better than that than they would if you just dictated the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never seen that first approach of, the new sheriff in town ever ever working out well for anybody. Although unfortunately I have seen it happen, in both large and smaller organizations. So it's not uncommon, but I've just never seen it turn out well.
Yeah, me either. You know, um, so you mentioned your people, different skill sets, different people play different roles. They bring different things to the team. That leads me into the next question I have for you, which is the team. Tell me about your idea of what makes good leadership and what how do you go about building a team
Yeah,
and
that's
assessing a team?
hmm So I think about, the leaders that have inspired me and, who I would want to go and work with time and time again. And I think I think the thing that pops out for me most is that those leaders lead by example. I think about, one of the CEOs I worked for that I just felt like I was continually learning. I'd come in and it would be an earnings call and, there'd be something new that was going on, or there'd be some international expansion or some M&A. And they were always very active, an active part of those processes. So I think first and foremost, good leaders lead by example. And so when I build my teams, I try to make sure that I would never ask a member of my team to do something that I, had A, never done before, or B, was not willing to. I think what that begins to build is outside of respect, for that is trust. And I think good leaders build trust amongst the teams and their colleagues. And part of that trust building is providing, proving that you're capable of not just managing the group, but you're knowledgeable about the subject matter expertise, and you can get there and demonstrate that you can pull your weight of the team as well. And so, while you've got their backs, you're also a part of that team and an active, member and participation of the group success.
Yeah, that's I mean, I agree with you. It's funny. You don't necessarily see it happening when it's happening, but when you're in a good team.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's great collaboration, it's great fun, things are getting done.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are really great. And you also know very quickly
You
when it's
you
bad.
do, but I think, you just hit on something, is that it's great fun, and it is. I think really
Mm,
successful teams, they laugh a lot together,
yeah.
they have a good time together. There's a feeling of, we're in this, we're all rowing in the same direction in the boat, we're winning, we're making progress, we can see our results, and we're having a good time doing it together. And,
Mm,
it's rare when you get to be a part of that, but once you do, I think it's very hard to go back. Things I also look for is, do these team members have good work balance?
mm,
Do they have lives outside of work? Because I think when you come to work and that's your only agenda, you begin to get a
mm,
personal agenda. And
yeah,
so
that's no
I
good.
oftentimes at teams also look, what's going on outside of work? It's people, I think some corporations love it when they've got employees willing to give 60, 70-hour work weeks. I don't think that that's healthy. I don't think that it's good for any team. Because I think that you need to have that balance in there.
I agree with you. I also don't believe it's very productive. I think, we're humans, we're social creatures, and the batteries need recharging. And if you're just
Yep.
going at it for 60, 70 hours a week after week, now every once in a while, yeah, sure, pull up the bootstraps, dive in, you got to get something done, no problem. But if that stuff drags out for
Yeah.
months on end,
Burnout.
yeah, the human
I-
nature goes right out of that really
Yeah.
quick.
Yep.
I think leaders today that have been in leadership roles for the past, say, 4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
they led through an unprecedented time. I mean, nobody had a playbook for, oh, by the way, we're going to throw a global pandemic in the middle of what you're doing, by the way. So just
No.
throw that in there. But can you just give us some insight, Wendy, on the process that you use when you have to make tough decisions?
Well, yeah, and I think there's a couple of them, Stephen. I think, I used to work for Amazon, AWS, and I don't know how familiar you are with Amazon and their culture, but they live and die by their leadership principles. And there were 13 of them when I was there. And they have a couple of them that I've taken with me, and I'm thinking I've implemented them. The first one is have backbone, and what that means is, you know, executive leaders or strong leaders have opinions and come to the table with that opinion. Now what I would tell you is I would say come to the table with data. you know Especially in challenging times. You bring up the
Yeah.
pandemic. I mean, it was a very emotional time. People had
Mhm.
kids, they had dogs. We were all, I mean, we were crazy. So to the extent that you can take the emotions out of, a decision and come at it from a data-driven decision, I think is something that I had learned very early on, and it's how I come to work. I come armed
Mhm.
with data. So, have backbone and come to that table with the opinion. But at the end of the day, you have to, at some point, disagree and commit. And
Mhm.
it's really that second part of that, which is the commitment part,
Yeah.
um, that is important. And one of the other things that Amazon does around that is they take decision making and they drive it down the
Mm.
organization. Because, as you said, a lot of times these decisions are made at the executive level, but they don't need to
Mhm.
be. They don't need to be.
Yeah.
And if organizations can make decisions faster and get out of their way, and if they're not circling back on those decisions time and time again, the organization moves forward quicker. So it's,
Mhm.
have backbone, disagree and commit. But there's another concept that I like. It's around one-way and two-way doors. And this is all on the internet. I'm sure if you, I mean, this is very Amazonian, but
Mhm.
it's the concept that if a decision is a two-way door, meaning I can easily walk in and I can easily walk out, it's two
Mhm.
ways, those decisions get pushed down in the organization. Anybody can make a two-way door decision. Let's make it, let's disagree, but then let's commit and let's move. If
Mhm.
it's a decision that really is a one-way door, it's going to dramatically change the company, it's going to change the strategy, it's going to take years to unwind. That's called a one-way door decision. And those are really the decisions that should go up to the executive level.
Mhm.
But other people in the organization need to be empowered to make those decisions that are not going to really impact the organization in any critical way, that they can't quickly unwind and reverse.
I love something that you said, and it's part of the DNA that I've inherited or learned over the years. But there's only a couple of ways you can make decisions and then go about them. One is you can agree and commit, you can disagree and commit,
Okay.
but you can't agree and not commit.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you want healthy debate, you want ideas. You want like, what, Steve, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Well, really? But what about, you get through all that. But once you're done as a team, you go, okay, here's what we're going to do. Okay.
Yep.
Everybody gets on board and then you face the world and you go and you make it happen and you execute.
Yep.
Um,
There's nothing worse than when you think you've got people on board and they've committed, and then you find out that there's these back office meetings and they're revisiting, the
right.
same. And it's like, guys, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. We talked about it 3 weeks ago. We talked about it 4 weeks ago. And so I think that commit is really the key word there.
Mhm. Yeah. So one of the topics that I love to talk to you a little bit about. We could probably do an entire episode or maybe a whole week's worth of episodes on AI. But just can we touch on it just from your opinion on, what do you think about it? And how should executives in roles like yours be thinking about AI?
Yeah. It's such a hot topic today, and you're absolutely right. We could talk about it for days. And I'm
Hmm.
a big believer in AI
Hmm.
and the potential of AI. But I know that there are a lot of folks who aren't, who are kind of on the other side of almost paranoia that, okay, AI is going to come in and take over our jobs. And especially in the marketing world, I think there's a
Hmm.
lot of folks who believe, and I don't quite understand why they do, but that, what marketing does can easily be handed over to AI. And I don't believe that.
Hmm.
I think that, today, if you look at AI, it's very much in its early stage. And, I think of it as almost the toddler stage.
Right.
It's very, very
Sure.
young and very,
It's out of control, walking around on its
it's
own. Yeah.
throwing tantrums and,
Right.
no, that's said. Um, but I believe that AI can really help marketers become more efficient and more insightful and more customer focused, which is ultimately going to drive better results and ROI for their initiatives. And so we've been, in my practice, looking at AI, bringing AI into the organization in a couple of areas. So I think, the first is data analysis and insight. So AI can
Yeah.
analyze so much more data quickly and accurately than we can do on our own. And, typically in the past, I mean, this is years and years ago, but you had data analysts in your marketing group who, looked at Google Analytics, and that was big. Google, to even have
Hmm.
Google Analytics. But their job was to really get in and dig into the data to find what worked, what didn't work. And that could take a week. It could take, days to weeks to months. Now you can have that done, very quickly with the power of AI. And what that's doing
Uh,
is it's just freeing them up to do higher value work. Um,
yeah.
so I think that's an area that we're going to see really explode in marketing. I think we've all been impacted by the AI personalization power. So now you've got
Hmm.
algorithms that can create highly personalized experiences. And they do that by analyzing, past interactions, preferences, their demographics. And so now you have this whole new experience when you come in, whether it be your website, whether it be, your support sites, that it's like, okay,
Hmm.
this company really knows me. And then I do it all the time. I shop now. The only place I shop is on Facebook or Instagram
Right.
because I come on and they know
I'm the
exactly what I'm,
same way.
and it works. So,
Yeah.
that to me is just, again, helping us make better use of our marketing dollars. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's the really repetitive tasks, like
Mhm.
email marketing, social marketing, that again, somebody's got to be there to make sure that those things happen. Well, now with AI, this frees up marketers' time. They can now go focus on the strategic initiatives that fall after that email campaign, look at
Yeah.
more planning and look at more creative development.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for AI, and that what we need to do is we need to be embracing it. And I think it's going to be one of those things that just becomes, 10 years from now we'll be like, "Oh my gosh, how did we ever do this without it?"
Right.
Yeah.
Well, embracing the technology, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Adoption, and if you don't, you're just literally going to get run over by a freight
Yeah.
train because it's coming and it's coming fast.
Yeah.
Is it going to change job? Sure, it is. Is it going to eliminate some potential? Of course, it is. Right. Most technology does some sort of optimization around it, but to your point, it elevates people to go and focus
Yeah.
on the things that actually really matter because I won't write content now without running it through AI. I won't, I just won't, and if I'm sending important emails, I run it through
Yeah.
chat GPT. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? It's almost like having a little buddy there.
Well, it
Um,
it really is, and, I know a ton of writers, like, I myself do a ton of content,
mhm,
and sometimes you just need something to start with. I mean,
yep,
like I said, it's a toddler at this stage, so you'd never
uh,
go say, "Hey, create me this blog," and then just put it out without having that
right.
human interaction in between it. But
Uh,
it does, give somebody a starting point, and again, it's all
mhm,
about that productivity. Now instead of maybe doing, 1 blog a week, you've got somebody who can do 2 or 3.
mhm, yeah.
And that's
and be really super relevant.
yeah, exactly. And look at your organic, SEO results and, yes, that's a win-win for everybody.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, let me switch gears on you a little bit. So you've worked at public companies, you worked at private companies, you've kind of done some stuff on your own. You've done quite a bit over the last 30 years. So can you
Yeah.
pick out, for the listeners, just a couple of nuggets of your career that really like, man, I had fun doing that.
Yeah.
Man, I learned, a life lesson here, just something that you'd like to share with the audience about,
Yeah.
Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So you're right. I've been at very large organizations and I've been at startups. I think some of the more memorable and fun ones for me were those very early companies that were Series A companies. So I joined a number of those when I was like number 20, employee count, and you're the only person there and you're thinking, what am I going to do? I'm a person of one. But you then get to be a part of that growth. And I've taken companies from Series A through Series C, Series D, been the only marketer, then had teams of up to 60 people at this one startup organization. And I think what that really taught me was the ability to be very hands-on. And what I know about myself is I'm a very hands-on
Mhm.
marketer. So I don't like the pure management roles. I know that I've had CMO roles in very large organizations where your job literally is, you go to meetings and it's pure management. You're not doing any of that hands-on work. So I have learned that at least I know what makes me happy and what makes me tick. And that's really getting my hands on the keyboard per se.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like the most memorable experience, I think about um, this was a bigger CMO, bigger organization, and I learned how to play boardroom bingo from the
Oh
CEO
boy.
and the CFO. Have you ever heard of boardroom room bingo?
I have not
Oh, it
actually.
was so funny. So this was, I think it was before an earnings call, and the CFO went and wrote on the whiteboard Jagger. And the CEO starts laughing. He's like, all right, that's our word for the day. I'm like, okay, guys, what are we doing? And they had to explain boardroom bingo to me. So somebody picks a word, and then somewhere in that meeting, so whether it's a board meeting or maybe it's the live Q&A session of the earnings call, you have to work that word into your response. So in this case, it was an earnings call, and I think one of the
Mhm.
analysts has asked how we were going to respond to one of the latest competitors' offerings, and he said, "Hey, just like Jagger, or no, our company has moves just like Jagger, and we're well positioned, to capitalize here." And I think I
Nice.
actually at that point spit out my water.
Wow,
So
that's
that's
great.
something that I've now brought to other companies, and taught other people in my positions or in the C-suite, boardroom room bingo, and kind of as you say, it doesn't. Nobody said it can't be fun, so
Yeah.
it brought something
But
new.
you know what though? There's some science behind that, because if you're thinking about that word and thinking about having to work it in somewhere, you are going to be hyper attentive to what's going on in those
That's probably true.
conversations.
That's probably
And
true.
that's pretty cool. See,
Yeah,
that's
I think.
worth a half an hour right there if people listen to this.
Well, there you go. And I can't remember what the prize was. We probably had to buy him a beer or something afterwards. But it is a funny thing to do. And again, it's about building that the team.
Mhm.
Here we were, a CEO, a CFO, and the CMO sitting in a huge conference room, virtual earnings calls, and having a lot of fun with it. So that was
That's
kind of
great.
memorable for me.
That is very cool. So, wrapping up here, I have one final question for you. And so I consult with people and help them with go to market. I help them with sales, talent assessment, just because I love it. I love working with people. I love working with sales organizations. And over the years, marketing and sales are very connected. And years ago, it was pretty linear. If somebody wanted information, they'd go to the salesperson to get it. And then it was one of these. Well, now it that has almost flipped around. Marketing plays such a heavy role in informing customers and informing peers, and you know. So my question, in a long drawn out way, is for modern salespeople today, what advice would you have for them when they meet with a C-level person?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have always believed that everyone in a company works for sales. And I
Mm,
very strongly believe that. And I know that, you may have people in marketing go, horror. But at the end of the day, it's our job to help those people who carry a bag, reach their revenue target and, therefore help the company grow the business and meet the company's revenue targets. So um, for that reason alone, I think marketing sales need to be in lockstep. You know,
mm,
I think historically you saw a lot of contention at times between these two groups. Whereas, today they need to be working hand in hand. So
mm,
marketing needs to know from sales, what's going on in the field? What are you hearing? What are the questions, that prospects, customers are giving you? Marketing needs to know what's going on from a competitive landscape and be able to say, okay, hey, this company has now launched this. And those things need to come together so that marketing can, at the end of the day, provide enablement materials
mm,
that allow those teams to be effective. So I don't know that it's what advice I'd give to engage with a C-level person. I would say, you need to not just engage, but build that relationship. There needs to
mm,
be, you know, bi-weekly meetings where you sit down and you just you're discussing exactly what I've said. What's going on? What are you hearing? What's working? What messages are resonating? What's not resonating? And it really needs to become a team, a team
mm.
approach. And I've seen that work exceptionally well. So my advice would be, go set up that meeting. If you don't want to do a formal one, go to lunch, go to happy hour. You'll really
Mm.
get to know each other so that this becomes a very frequent, um, a frequent channel, I guess I would say, of communication that's open. And I think with that, both teams are going to get the best work that they can from
Yeah,
each
I
other.
yeah, I agree. And I'd be interested in what you think about this because I've been advising a lot of folks because when you come in a brand new engagement, you're trying to solve one of a couple problems. Either A, they're not getting in front of enough clients, they're not closing enough deals, whatever it is. And then you'll hear the obligatory, and I've heard this so many times, it makes me laugh. It's like, well, can't we just get marketing to give us like the three silver bullets? I'm like, yeah, hang on, let me just hit that easy button there. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll just
yeah,
do that. If it was that easy, it's like, come on. And
yeah,
then, the other one for sales guys is, they're like, oh, you just got to get to the CEO. It's like, well, do you?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
maybe, but so
yeah.
my advice has been to these folks like, yeah, you're going to meet with the CEO or the CMO or something at some point, but they've put a lot of people in place. They built teams, they've set missions, directions, they've got a lot going on. And I don't know that they're making those types of decisions. In other words, when you get to the point where you need to meet with that CEO to make a decision on capital or whatever you're trying to do,
I I
you,
I took your question wrong, Stephen. I'm sorry. I thought you meant internal salespeople to salespeople. You're talking about somebody that's selling that needs to engage with the C-level person. Is that
yes,
what you meant?
yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I
exactly.
was talking about internal teams. Um, so that's interesting. I think that, you have to think about what does a CMO care about? You
Right.
know, if I'm going to be sold something, it's typically a tool. When I think
Mm,
about, what it is that I need is typically a tool. And so that's going to be how does that help my team be more efficient, be more effective, be able to quantify, and be able to innovate faster. I think that that's what every CMO wants is the ability to, you know, develop high impact marketing programs, but be able to prove that. Because I think
mhm.
so often it's like, what's marketing done for me lately?
Right.
So they need that tangible ability to showcase work and showcase their results. So I think any salesperson going to a CMO needs to just put themselves in their shoes and go, okay, what is it that this CMO cares about? And it's all about helping their internal sales teams become more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been trying to help people get to. I mean, I think fundamentally, people want to, well, I want to get the meeting, I want to do this. It's like, well, but before you get there, let's assume all your dreams come true and you get that meeting that you want. have you done enough homework? Have you met with enough people? Do you understand their problem well enough to go
Yeah.
in and say, hey, look, I've met with your teams. Here's what I'm recommending. Here's the tool, and here's what it's going to do for you.
Exactly.
Here's the
And,
door.
it's not always going to be the CMO's decision. So as I mentioned, there's
Right.
distinct disciplines, right, within marketing. So do you need to talk to the growth marketing team? Do you need to
Mm,
talk to the product marketing team? Do you need to talk to the channel team? And so I think what happens if you just go directly to the CMO without really vetting that through the people who are going to be hands-on interacting with
mm,
that, if we're using the analogy of a tool, you're missing the boat, because
yep.
what the CMO is going to say is, have you talked to the team? Have they
Right.
tested it? Do they know that this works? What's it replacing? So I would make sure that you've got that buy-in and you've got the
Mm,
support from the folks who are actually, putting fingers on that tool
yep.
on a daily basis.
Well, that's great. That's great. Awesome. Wendy, this has
Stephen,
been
this was so
fantastic.
fun. This was so fun. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to come and dialogue with you.
You're very welcome. So, Wendy Caceres, ladies and gentlemen, thank you
Yep.
again. This has been another episode of Getting to Know Your CXOs. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye.
Cheers.